Well, good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome. It is hard to believe that we're already about a third of the way through the 2024 IFL schedule. Seems like yesterday that we got the season kicked off, but here we are. All teams have either 5 or 6 games under their belts. We have a much firmer idea of the contenders and pretenders of the league up to this point in the season. And tonight, we will have a look at what's to come in Week 8. For those of you who are new to my channel or the Indoor Football League, let me first say, welcome aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a massive Indoor Football League fan. I've channeled that passion into my current role as an IFL contributor for Sports Coast to Coast, a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site that specializes in coverage of the IFL and its member teams specifically. There are game previews, recaps, team-by-team breakdowns, basically everything that you would need to know to enhance your IFL fandom. Definitely worth checking out. I put the URL to the site in the description. You can also find my written version of this series there as well, and those will contain my picks also. So that is the introductory piece. And now for our small presentation here, if I can find it. Would help if I shared the screen. Et voila. So there it is. 7 weeks are in the books. We turn our attention to Week 8 as we flip the calendar to May, where the early spring eventually gives way to the summer months, the dog days. So Week 7, this could have been a massive week for us. And I'll get into more of the details of our results from last week in a little bit. But the overarching theme to last weekend, underdog dominance. They went 7-1 against the spread. Only Jacksonville was unable to cover their 2-touchdown handicap that they were put at against the Rattlers. And that stretch of time included 4 instances where the underdog team scored a last-minute touchdown to get on the right side of the point spread. That is called the backdoor cover. I know we've mentioned that a few times throughout this series so far, but now we have a multitude of examples to illustrate what exactly that looks like. So we will go over the game-by-game results shortly. We'll also have year-to-date season trends along with team analysis, as we have for the past couple weeks now. And once we reflect on that, we will set our sights on Week 8. We have 6 games this time around. 4 teams are on bye. My hometown Pirates, along with Tucson, Duke City, and Arizona. They'll be enjoying this week from the comforts of their couch, getting some much-needed rest in most cases, getting guys back up to health for the middle stretch of the season. So 2 games Friday, 3 games Saturday, and 1 game Sunday is what that looks like. We'll do our single game analysis as we always do, and then we'll try to finally put together a winning 3-leg parlay. It didn't take this long for us to get it last year. We've had some near misses so far this season, with 4 of our 6 parlay attempts resulting in 2 legs correct, so just 1 short. So is this the week that drought finally ends? We'll wrap up with futures forecasts and trends to see which teams are up and down on the championship game market. And some big news, something that Commissioner Todd Tryon announced in his Inside the IFL segment last week. The league has a new sportsbook partner, ESPN Bet. Now, the second book, along with DraftKings, at least here in Massachusetts, to offer lines on IFL games. And I'll discuss a little bit as to what their platform looks like. Unfortunately, I just checked a few minutes ago. Their lines are not up at the moment for this week's games. But once they do, we'll definitely be sure to take a closer look at that. So there's the list of the results. We had a couple of those favorites that were victimized by backdoor covers, notably Green Bay at 11.5, with Iowa climbing back to within 7 in that one. And the Northern Arizona Wranglers, who let up a late touchdown to the Sugar Skulls, which reduced their margin of victory to 3 points. Those couple were particularly painful because in both cases, the favorite had a 16-point halftime lead, nearly blown. Thankfully for those favorites, they were able to pick up straight-up wins, but we weren't looking for straight-up wins. We were looking for covers, and we did not get that in the least bit. San Diego was very, very nearly a sneaky win for us. They found themselves trailing 33-7 well into the third quarter. So another slow start that they had to overcome, and they very nearly did it. After Bay Area put up their 33rd point, the Panthers did not get back in that scoring column for the rest of the game. And the strike force got it to within 1, gambled and went for 2 inside the 1-minute warning. That gamble ultimately did not pay out, and that lost the strike force the game. And then our other incorrect selection, Duke City against Vegas. This is another one that was looking good at the half. We had a 28-24 game. Vegas was leading Duke City, 52 first half points. And then the next points of the game didn't come until almost halfway through the fourth quarter. So we had that much feared prolonged stretch of time where neither team scored, and all it takes is that stretch for an under bet to look really good and for an over bet to get sent to the shredder. So those were our 4 losses, but we did have some good wins, notably Sioux Falls, one of those 4 aforementioned backdoor covers. That one actually went in our favor. The Gunslingers at plus 16.5 was also a really shrewd choice. That line actually moved to San Antonio plus 14 prior to kickoff, so the Gunslingers were getting a little bit more respect from betting handle as the week got closer to kickoff there. Jacksonville, Arizona, that one was really close, but we ended up getting the over. Funny enough, the play happened on a safety that brought us from 81 points to 83. The game ended up with 90 points in an Arizona 55-35 win over the Sharks. And then our best bet of the week, this one kind of channels back to what made us so successful last year. We took a chance with Tulsa on the money line, forgiving them for the previous week's flop against Frisco. And my gosh, this paid in spades for us. This was a battle whole way through, very much like the classic vintage indoor football style of play where both teams are just trading touchdowns the whole way through. And once Tulsa, up by 6, got a fourth quarter interception, that was basically that. It wound up being our highest scoring game of the season with 131 points. That was 2 points off last season's high mark in a game between Arizona and Bay Area. The Oilers winning 72-59, logging a key in-conference win and putting themselves in that provisional playoff spot as the current number 4 in the East. So looking at our results so far by bet types, it's pretty much dead even, with the exception of that money line. We took a chance on a lot of underdogs early. Unfortunately, it was pretty much all chalk with the favorites from weeks 1 through 5. We have had in the past 3 weeks at least 2 outright underdogs win. So there might be hope for these underdogs quite yet. And then our parlay result right there. First leg kind of hurt us. Green Bay could have actually scored on their last drive, but they ended up killing clock. Iowa didn't take any other timeouts to stop it. And it seemed like both teams were just satisfied to have the game end on that note. So bit of a bad break for us, but we get a clean canvas for this week. So a snapshot at our yearly results and week by week net gain and loss. You'll notice that this past week, even though we split 4 wins, 4 losses, we made a net gain this week, fueled entirely by that Tulsa payout at plus 230. That got us $33 alone on the flat method of betting. I didn't do as much on it on the weighted method, just because of how I spread the bets out. But nonetheless, a good sign going forward for us, getting that winning week, hoping that can continue like it did in last year's streak. And some more charts here to illustrate. We are on the right track. If all goes well for us, we'll probably be on the right side of zero by this time next week. So that is our goal. And now, if we take a look at these yearly results, this is the type of analysis where the sports books look at it and say, this is exactly what we want. So through 7 weeks of play, the over-under and the spread is basically a 20 and 21 split. Granted, we had that lopsided result for the Underdogs in week 7, but taking the full body of work, it's pretty much 50-50 either way. And for as long as that's the case, the house is always going to win. So our challenge is to figure out, where is that streak going to come next, be it with the over-unders or favorites or underdogs on the spread. And could we perhaps use team-specific records on those couple of bet types to help us navigate? So for example, if we look at over-unders, the Green Bay Blizzard and Bay Area Panthers have gone under their totals in all of their games except for one. And the opposite is true for Frisco and San Antonio. As far as the spread goes, we have just one undefeated team against the spread, and that is the San Diego Strike Force. They're going to put that to the test against the Northern Arizona Wranglers this week. Again, we will get to that game in just a little bit. Road teams against the spread, also pretty even, right at 500. So in the eyes of DraftKings and ESPN Bet and other books that carry these games, it's basically as perfectly balanced as you can get, which is the ideal outcome for them. As far as straight up outright betting, favorites are still converting at an 80% clip, even though underdogs have had a little bit more success with upsets in the past few weeks. Doesn't seem to be too sizable of an advantage yet in terms of home versus road, but home teams are generally doing a better job than road teams at that. So not particularly surprising there, but then again, not totally statistically significant either. So the only addition I have to my disclaimers for this week is about ESPN Bet. So I did have a chance to check this out last week. They do offer more bet types than does DraftKings. For instance, if a spread is 10 points or greater on a given game, DraftKings will not carry the money line for that game if it takes place in the regular season. ESPN Bet, however, does offer that for all games regardless of spread. And in addition, ESPN Bet also offers a prop bet for both teams on drive results, which can be as simple of a bet as Green Bay scores or Green Bay doesn't score. Or you can go more granular and say Green Bay will have a first drive end in a touchdown, field goal attempt, or turnover on downs. So in the event that moneyline is not available for DraftKings, I will refer to ESPN Bet to fill in those blanks, but I'm still using DraftKings as my main source of picks moving forward. So if a moneyline bet is not available on DraftKings, I am not going to be going to ESPN Bet to make that moneyline pick. I want to keep this consistent with the way that we've started this thing from the very beginning. Aside from that, usual broken record in me. This is for fun, entertainment, kind of curiosity about how we can leverage these numbers and maybe get some of these picks right. It's been a little bit of a challenge so far. 19 wins, 22 losses. If you are of gambling age and in a legal state to do so, feel free to tail my bets, but please do so responsibly. And if you need help with anything bordering on problem gaming, that there's a bunch of resources out there to help out with that matter. So with that all being said, let's put a rough April in which we went 11-17 behind us, and let's kick off May with a winning week. Let's dive into these lines. Our first game, we have two on Friday this week. They are both 8 o'clock Eastern Time kickoffs. We'll go top to bottom here, talk about the Jacksonville Sharks and Tulsa Oilers game first. Tulsa, after their impressive win on the road at Quad City, they are laying 2 touchdowns here, 13 in the hook. Over-under is set at 82.5. No money line bets available for the reasons I said just a moment ago. So Jacksonville, obviously been a rough season. Coming off that NAL championship in 2023, things were looking really good for the franchise. They were projected as a playoff team by a lot of people, myself included. And it just hasn't materialized like that for them yet. They evidently missed Sam Castronova, who departed for San Antonio for this season. And the offense has really, really struggled in that stead. They've been better as of late since Fred Payton took over at quarterback. But it doesn't change the fact that they have maxed out at 35 points as their single game high this season. And that's something that's going to be a challenge to eclipse. I know Tulsa's defense has been a little bit leaky the past few weeks. They've given up over 50 a game in a 3-week span. But this figures at home in front of their fans to be a totally get-right game for Tulsa. They definitely want to do better than their last home result, in which they lost by 28 against Frisco. Jacksonville offers arguably the friendliest matchup to do that in. And the Jacksonville defense definitely feeling the effects of the offense not being able to pick up their end of the bargain. They have allowed 48, 61, and 55 points in their past 3 games. And Daniel Smith is coming off a career-high 8-touchdown performance. I don't think that it's going to take that for the Oilers to win again. But Tulsa at minus 13.5 is absolutely a very reasonable pick to make here. The logic being, spread bets generally hang up well when you're betting on a favorite whose opponent is as offensively challenged as the Jacksonville Sharks are. And we know that there's another level to this Oilers defense as well. After all, they limited Frisco to 31 points in a game that went to overtime earlier in this season. So we know that upside is there, really on both sides of the ball. And I'm expecting them to exhibit that upside right off the bat in this one. So Tulsa minus 13.5 is my play there. The other 8:05 game, it's Green Bay on the road against Sioux Falls. These two teams did meet a couple weeks ago at the Rush Center, a game which Green Bay won by a count of 48-35. Green Bay is laying 10 on the road. So Sioux Falls for the second consecutive week, a 10-point underdog at home. Granted, last week's game was in Fargo. Over-under for the game is set at 79.5. No money line bet is available. And the main thing that I looked at with this bet is both teams' history so far against the spread. Green Bay so far, 4-1 against the handicap. And Sioux Falls, 1-4. But do you want to know how Green Bay got that lone loss and Sioux Falls got that lone win? That's right. Both of them were backdoor covers. You can easily make the case that that could be a 5-0 ATS record for Green Bay and 0-5 record for Sioux Falls on the handicap. And for Sioux Falls, to be honest with you, my heart kind of goes out to them a little bit. They have extreme talent on that roster, and it's not like a scenario where they're tripping over themselves week after week. I mean, sure, a penalty here and there might kind of set them back a little bit, but aside from that, it's like you have Billy Hall, who's proven to be a playmaker, if nothing else. You have Kentrez Bell, one of the best receivers in the game. Zay Jackson, an explosive running back who unfortunately got hurt in last week's game. It's a reasonably solid team that you could argue has had a really rough stretch of luck. Green Bay, on the other hand, they have not had to rely on luck at all. They have earned every bit of this 4-1 start that they've gotten out to, and they've looked pretty convincing in the process, especially that defense, which now that it's paired up with a reasonably good offense, is showing why the Blizzard can not only make the playoffs, but perhaps steal a game or two, maybe make a crazy run to the championship. It just seems like they're scratching the surface right now, and they're coming off 4 wins in a row. Arguably should be 5-0 if they didn't let the opener against the Pirates slip away from them. But I think -10 is a reasonable number to get Green Bay at. My model has Green Bay -11.5 or -12. So this is the pick that I uphold the most confidence in. Green Bay on the road, laying 10, still getting the job done. 3 Saturday games, each offering their own unique storyline. Our first one, 7:05 Eastern kickoff, the rematch that everybody has been waiting roughly a week for. The Frisco Fighters heading to San Antonio, playing the Gunslingers. Despite the upset win, San Antonio is still getting 7 on the spread. Granted, at a little bit different odds, as you can see there. It is now -115 and -105 for Frisco's side of the spread. On top of that, the over-under is 103.5. You can bet Frisco on the money line at -250 or San Antonio at +205. And I am really looking forward to seeing how this chess match unfolds between these two teams, because the first time around, both teams threw basically everything that they had plus the kitchen sink at one another. So how is that game plan going to change? How is that game plan going to adjust? And in the minds of Frisco, you have to think that they're going to come up with a way defensively to, at the very least, slow down San Antonio's high-scoring attack. Sam Castronova is playing at a very clear MVP level right now, and he's got an unbelievable supporting cast, split between Khalil Rashad, DJ Myers, and others that are just, it's basically playing whack-a-mole if you're a defensive coordinator. Definitely not an enviable spot for whoever goes up against the Gunslingers on a game-by-game basis. But for this game, I'm looking at Frisco and their ability to influence the tempo of this game. I think we saw last week that engaging in a shootout with the Gunslingers is not exactly the finest idea. So Frisco might be more inclined to go on offensive drives with 5-6 minutes of time elapsed for the specific purpose of not allowing Castronova to have the ball for those 5 and 6 minutes. Frisco winning the time of possession battle will do wonders for them to avoid a second consecutive loss, which would actually be the first time in franchise history that happens if San Antonio wins. And we talked about it around the season trends portion of this. Both teams are 4-1 to the over. This is a spot where I'm going against the grain of those numbers. I'm playing the under here at 103.5. I just think Frisco is too well coached to allow another 50-plus point outburst for the Gunslingers. And as long as Frisco doesn't go ham on the offensive side of the ball, which could realistically happen against San Antonio, I think this one holds up. We got burned on an over or betting the under at 100 for a San Antonio game in the past. But this is still a lot of points. And like we saw last week, it just takes one or two empty possessions on some medium to long length drives to really swing this bet in favor of underbetters. So that is my play here. I foresee something along like low 50s to low 40s as the final result. It's going to be close, and we're always susceptible to those, one or two play scoring drives that take very little time off the clock. But in my mind, under is the play here. And we'll see how it goes. 8:05, Quad City trying to rebound from their loss at Tulsa, or against Tulsa at home, with a matchup against the Iowa Barnstormers, another Eastern Conference team still looking for win number 1 on the season. Quad City is laying a field goal as road favorites. Over-under is 83.5. Quad City trading for minus 148 on the money line, and Iowa at plus 124. And for Quad City, this is a chance to kind of put the last matchup in day one behind them as a distant memory. For those of you who remember late last season, Quad City, winnable game against an Iowa team that was really struggling. The next thing that we saw was Iowa erupting for a season-high 80 points in a convincing win over the Steamwheelers that pushed them further down the playoff poll, en route to the Steamwheelers ending up in 4th place, having to go to Frisco in the first round last year. So Quad City's been playing some pretty good ball. They have definitely unlocked a key to their running game that's allowed them to score 59 last week, 53 the week before. And Iowa's done a lot of good things with Kyle King as quarterback. They haven't quite put it all together yet, but the defense, upon looking at the numbers, they're a deceptively good unit for the team that they're on. They do give up less than 40 points per 10 possessions, and I feel like that's going to come into play. They have good defenders on that side of the ball, like Jefferson Fritz, that can cause problems for Quad City. And I do believe that an upset special is brewing here. This is a risky pick going with a winless team against the spread, but Iowa at home going up against a team that has already lost twice as minus 200 underdogs or favorites or longer. So this is a roll of the dice, but could do much worse than picking a team at home hungry for its first win. Like the spread suggests, I see this coming down to a potential field goal late. But I do see Iowa with their first win of the year in what we'll label as a technical upset. 9:00. We have two fights on the card for Saturday, But this one is the actual main event. The Vegas Nighthawks and Bay Area Panthers, two teams putting their 5-0 records on the line. Unfortunately for us IFL fans, only one will emerge at 6-0. Oddsmakers think that team is going to be Bay Area, whereas they are 2.5-point favorites in defending home turf. Over-under is 88.5. Vegas plus 114 on the money line, and Bay Area minus 135. And really, the paths that both teams have taken to get here, basically polar opposites. For Bay Area, it's almost been like business as usual. Their winning streak dating back to last season is now up to 10 games. And Vegas is in the midst of their biggest winning streak in franchise history. And I'm not sure a lot of people had that on their bingo card for this point in the season. Jerome Johnson against Daquan Neal should make for highly entertaining football. And I look at these numbers, and Vegas as the outright underdog is something that we're probably not going to have the chance to bet again this season. Vegas has slightly better advanced metric numbers, if you can believe it. Number 1 offense compared to number 5 for Bay Area, and both teams sport top 3 defenses. And typically when a home team is favored by around 1, 2, 3 points on the spread, it basically equates to both teams being considered equals. And for that reason, and we apply this lesson pretty much any time that we see it, all else being equal, why not take a shot at the favorites? It always makes you queasy to bet against the defending champions. But if there's any one team that can take down Bay Area right now, Vegas might be the number 1 choice. And you know that Vegas, they're going to have a higher level of execution than they did last week against Duke City. They had some unexpected wrinkles to iron out, but I think that just gives Coach Mike Davis an enhanced focus of what the game plan is going to be against a team that right now is the class of the Indoor Football League. So we are going with 2 upsets on Saturday night, Iowa over Quad City and Vegas on the road against the reigning champs. And Sunday's standalone game. This is Cinco de Mayo. Unfortunately, no Tucson Sugar Skulls will be around to help us celebrate. But the Northern Arizona Wranglers head out to San Diego to take on the Strike Force, who are favored by 4.5 points. Over-under is set at 88.5. Northern Arizona is plus 154 money line, and San Diego minus 185. And right now, this is the number 3 and number 4 team, respectively, in the Western Conference. San Diego could probably be a little bit higher in the standings, but they have had the unfortunate draw of having to play Bay Area twice in the past 2 weeks. Obviously, both those games resulted in narrow losses of 3 and 1 point, respectively. For the Wranglers, their past couple weeks have been pretty interesting. We saw them for the first month or so of the season lighting it up on offense, while the defense kind of took a couple steps back based on what we saw from 2022 and 2023. But the past 2 weeks have kind of identified as more of those vintage types of Northern Arizona games. They beat Duke City a couple weeks ago, 39-23. Took care of the Sugar Skulls last week, 34-31. So while the offense may have hit a snag, the defense has been there. And sometimes that's what it takes for good teams to kind of have that balancing act week to week in coming up with wins as the season progresses along. Notably, both teams actually lead the league right now in adjusted tempo, which is a metric that looks at each team's number of possessions per game. So I do feel like that's being considered in this point total here. But in a game that could represent a playoff preview, I see both sides of the ball getting time to shine. And I do like the under here set in the high 80s. Again, risky business going up with the under against a team led by Nate Davis, because he could go off for 8 touchdowns essentially anytime that he wants. But I do not foresee this game winding up as a shootout type of game. The Wranglers are playing really good defensively. That's going to be put to the test. And I believe San Diego gets a chance to shine defensively as well. They've held up okay so far, but you got to remember their schedule has been brutal as far as offenses go. They've had to play Arizona, averaging high 40s a game. San Antonio, which we know what they've done so far this season, averaging 55, 56. And Bay Area, right around the high 40s, low 50s themselves. So in going up against a Northern Arizona offense that's, I guess for lack of better terms, seeking some answers and resolutions, playing the under seems like the choice for me. So that's what we'll go with. We'll scroll back up here. And now we will dive into our 3-leg parlay of the week. This is our 7th attempt. Let's hope that it is lucky number 7. The first leg, the one that I'm hoping sees us through, is taking Frisco on the money line. Can San Antonio win this game? They proved last week they absolutely can. But history is not on their side. As I mentioned before, the Frisco Fighters have not lost consecutive games in their franchise history, at least in the same season. You could argue 2021 to 2022, dropping consecutive games to the Pirates. But from a season-to-season standpoint, Frisco has yet to endure a 2-game losing streak, which honestly is outright impressive. So I'm banking on that trend to continue, and Frisco putting up a solid game, exacting revenge from their defeat 7 days ago. Second leg, I'm going to be taking Vegas Bay Area under 88.5. This kind of holds the same argument that we just went over for Northern Arizona, San Diego. This is a potential playoff preview. And coupled with the fact that Bay Area games are 4-1 to the under so far, this makes going with the low side of this total pick a very reasonable choice. Third leg, another pick that's proven to be really reliable this season, the San Diego Strike Force, undefeated 5-0 against the spread. If we do get this thing to Sunday, we'll hope that the Strike Force can advance that record to 6-0 and cash out our first parlay of the season. If we put $10 on it, maximum payout potential is $51 and a couple cents. So we are basically multiplying our money by 4, a little more, if we do wind up getting this to the cashier. So again, 3-leg parlay, Frisco straight up, Vegas Bay Area under, Northern Arizona, San Diego, Strike Force on the spread. And now, time to take a look at the futures, which saw this week from last week some pretty significant changes. Bay Area remains the favorite, plus 270, but a new team with the second shortest odds, the Vegas Nighthawks at plus 400, bumping Frisco at its plus 450 odds down to the third shortest odds. The Frisco movement is really interesting to me because if you remember, they started the season at plus 380 to win the IFL championship. And now suddenly one loss against San Antonio puts it up to its maximum total so far on the season. I'm telling you, if you're a Frisco fan or you're looking for the fighters to finally break through and get those championship rings, you're not going to get a number better than this. Definitely worth a significant investment if that's the choice that you decide to make. So along with the fighters, the Pirates stick around at plus 475. That is the same as what they were at a week ago. Arizona plus 700, San Diego plus 750. And then we have a clear divide as to, for what lack of a better term, I'll call the second tier. Green Bay plus 1,500, Northern Arizona plus 1,800, or 1,600, excuse me. San Antonio plus 1,700, Tulsa plus 25. Quad City plus 3,000, Tulsa plus 4,000. And then you've got the bottom four teams, each at plus 7,500. So again, very interesting to see how these teams move up and down as we get closer to the conclusion of the regular season and into the playoffs. And I'm hoping that next week we will have ESPN bet lines live so that I can show you guys what those look like. But for the time being, that is going to wrap up week 8 of Wager Wednesday. I want to thank you all for coming out, taking some time out of your evening to fancy me in some discourse of the IFL. So for those of you who are going to try your luck, I wish you the very best, and I will see you at the cashier. Have a great night, everybody.